This was actually a fairly good night for Joe Biden.
There are a lot of verbal miscues. There's a lot of gaffes between these two men.
Hey everyone, it's David, producer for The Benjamin Dixon Show, and like it or not, the New Hampshire primary has come and gone for both Democrats and Republicans. On the surface, it doesn't look like there's any surprises. Donald Trump won the Republican primary, and Joe Biden won the Democratic primary. It's worth noting that the Democratic primary isn't being counted because they defied the Democratic National Committee's new order of states in which they vote and went first, and so they were disqualified. I said there were no surprises on the surface because there are some things that to take away that expose things that most people won't want to talk about because it spoils their narratives. So in the Democratic primary, Joe Biden wasn't on the ballot because if he registered to be on the ballot, he would have been disqualified according to DNC rules for participating in an unauthorized primary. That left the candidates primarying him as the names on the ballot, including Marianne Williamson and Dean Phillips. But, like I said, Biden won. And that was because there was a relatively quiet operation underway to organize a write-in campaign and get voters to the polls and write in Joe Biden's name. While Biden and the Democratic Party said that the New Hampshire primary was meaningless, it wouldn't have been a good look if Biden lost, especially in New Hampshire where he previously did not do well, because he lost the New Hampshire primary in 2020. That being said, despite his name not being on the ballot, he won by write-in, and the candidates who are primarying him did not. Dean Phillips got 19.5% and Marianne Williamson got 4.6%. Biden, by write-in, got 55%. Now, the reason that this is noteworthy is that he won by write-in. If the candidates trying to primary him were going to make headway, this was their best opportunity to do so. This was their opportunity to outshow him. Now, I've never been a Biden supporter, and I understand why people wanted to primary him, especially on things such as student loan debt and Israel. Worth noting that on student loan debt, despite the Supreme Court invalidating his debt relief plan, he has actually been forgiving student debt every week by the millions. And as of January 19th, the administration has actually forgiven $136.6 billion for more than 3.7 million Americans. It's not the $400 or $500 billion he promised, but it's actually the most in history. Regardless, his win in New Hampshire basically cements him as the nominee. And as much as any candidate should be able to be challenged and questioned and held accountable, as the U.S. political system goes, if we weren't going to have Joe Biden, the Democrats shouldn't have chosen him in 2020. It's just, he's an incumbent president, and as much as people frown upon it, he was going to be the nominee for a second term, unless he decided not to run, which I never really thought was very likely. But now on to Trump. Trump beat Haley 54.4 to 43.3%. About 11 points. Haley did come in competitively, considering her rise in the polls, and she's saying she's going to stay in the race, but Trump won and is the presumed nominee. Unless things change, polling does not give her much of a path towards the nomination in the remaining 48 states and territories. Here's the surprise on the Republican side, though. Much of Haley's voters said they would not vote for Donald Trump. Now, in New Hampshire, it's important to know that you don't have to be a registered Republican or Democrat to vote. Anybody can vote in the New Hampshire primary on either side. But considering that a significant amount of Haley voters won't vote for Trump, it does show a weakening in Trump's support. We know he lost support prior to January 6th because he lost the election. And after January 6th, I think we're going to find that he's lost more support than has been anticipated. What's really telling is that his former spokesperson, Kayleigh McEnany, called the weakness out. last night on Fox News.
He also, at some point, has to get into general election, going after independents and maybe disaffected Democrats. And this speech probably wasn't that.
No, this speech was a speech to dispose of the last remaining competitor, if you could call it that. She's still significantly behind him. He's pulling a majority support, but to get her out of the race. I would suggest that adopting a general election tone is what you do at this point. And here's why I say this. This was actually a fairly good night for Joe Biden. When you look at our voter analysis, only 10% said, I would not vote for Joe Biden if he's the nominee. He won a plurality of voters who said he was too old. He won a majority of voters who are upset about the Gaza war. So the divides in the Democrat Party, and this is a small sample size, but perhaps aren't as stark as one would think. But when you look at the Republican Party, 7 in 10 Nikki Haley voters said, I would not vote for Trump. There was the Des Moines Register poll, 43% said, no, I wouldn't vote for Trump. If I'm Trump, I sit back and I exclusively focus on the general election. I take the posture of a presumptive nominee. I focus on number one, uniting the party, and number two, winning the independents, which Nikki Haley won 55 to 39%.
So 7 out of 10 of Nikki Haley's voters say they won't vote for Trump. This shows that there are cracks in the support. I don't think that either candidate's going to get a landslide. It's not that big of a shift in people that won't vote for Biden or people that won't vote for Trump. But I think the election is going to come down to former Trump supporters, anti-Trump voters, women, independents, and the unlikely voter, those that can't be accounted for so well because they don't vote regularly, consistently, that type of thing. If Biden's going to win, it's going to be with a combination of those categories. And the fact that Trump's former spokesperson, who generally pushes narratives positive and favoring Trump, the fact that she called this out on Fox News, I think shows how legitimate the cracks are, how legitimate the waning support is. Now, Trump did respond because, he can't really take any criticism. And she's also not necessarily criticizing him beyond that opinion. Trump took to Truth Social and wrote, I don't need any advice from Rhino, Kayleigh, McEnany on Fox. Just had a giant victory over a badly failing candidate, Birdbrain, that's his nickname for Nikki Haley. And she's telling me what I can do better. Save your advice for Nikki. This is not anything earth-shattering. We would expect this from Trump anyway. Now, here was McEnany in a conversation with Kevin Walling, who was a Biden campaign surrogate, and they're talking about the age of the candidates.
We're going to have a replay of what we saw in 2020, and there's a lot of concerns, actually, that I've seen now recently with Donald Trump on the stuff.
You cannot compare the two.
Absolutely, we can. Last night he said he won New Hampshire in the general election. He lost it to Hillary Clinton. Lost it to Joe Biden by 7 points.
You cannot compare the two.
Haley, he mixed up Nikki Haley. He mixed up Nikki Haley and Nancy Pelosi for minutes on end in his speech and came back to it. So there are a lot of verbal miscues. There's a lot of gaffes between these two men.
2/3 of the American people think that President Biden is too old. They do not say that about Donald Trump. So you can say this, you can make this argument, you can spew the DNC talking points. They don't work. It's not as high as Joe Biden,
but a majority of people feel the same way about Donald Trump. Can I just point out,
in all due respect, this is called projection. We know that age is a vulnerability for the president. We have fresh sound bites every single week. We could fill the entirety of this hour. Take me off. I'll go into the other room. We could fill the entirety of the hour with stumbles and fumbles and mishaps. And we knew the second that Donald Trump became the presumptive nominee, you guys would flip it and try to press age upon President Trump. But the problem is 2/3 of the American people say Biden is too old. He doesn't have mental acuity. And it's the exact converse when it comes to President Trump. People see a former strong executive. They'll make the decision ultimately, but just good luck with the projection.
They will make that decision ultimately.
And so there you have her pushing the narrative that Trump is strong and youthful. Sure, the polling numbers say something about Biden, and that's maybe in part because people really feel that way, but it's also because there's been all these clips on social media showing moments where he looks dumb and stupid or like an airhead or like he's forgetting and he doesn't speak well, he mumbles. And the attacks have been getting pushed. There's social media accounts and pundits that are pushing the narrative that Biden is in decline. Let's be honest. There is decline, but I think with Biden is really physical. He's stiff. He's not moving the way he used to. I think it's more physical. Trump is showing cognitive issues. He's confusing lots of things. He's forgetting lots of things. He's misspeaking often. And some of his statements don't make sense. They just kind of go nowhere. So I think both candidates are going to face this, and it's a decision that is going to be made as we get closer and closer between two candidates and where voters stand. And since Biden gets hammered so often about his age and how he comes across, I think we should highlight Trump's multiple mistakes, because it's not just Nikki Haley or New Hampshire or saying World War II instead of World War III. Take a look at this compilation.
With Obama, we won an election that everyone said couldn't be won.
Obama dropped missiles and they ended up hitting a kindergarten. If that's the case, he's going to end up being indicted when he leaves office.
Obama he doesn't want to talk about it. He doesn't want to he doesn't even mention them in his statements. It's all coming through Iran.
Well, you mean President Biden?
They were interviewing him 2 weeks ago, and they said, what would you advise President Obama? The whole world seems to be exploding. They never report the crowd on January 6th. You know, Nikki Haley is in charge of security. We offered her 10,000 people, soldiers, National Guard, whatever they want. They turned it down.
He was confused. He was confused the same way he said Joe Biden was going to start World War II.
We would be in World War II very quickly if we're going to be relying on this man.
Clearly, Donald Trump is not the same Trump from 2016.
When I came here, everyone thought Bush was going to win. They thought Bush because Bush supposedly was a military person. Great. You know what? He was a military. He got us into the Middle East. We came up with a new couple of words for corn. Viktor Orban, Hungary, very powerful. He fronts on both Russia and Ukraine. They were funding Hezbollah and Hamas.
When he gets off the teleprompter, there's a lot of mistakes, a lot of stream of consciousness stuff.
We're also going to place strong protections to stop banks and regulators from trying to debank you from your political beliefs, what they do. They want to debank you, and we're going to debank. Think of this. Very big hello to a place where we've done very well. Sioux Falls. Thank you very much, Sioux Falls. So Sioux City, let me ask you, how many people come from Sioux City?
So there you go. I mean, honestly, the first few times when he mistaked Jeb Bush for George Bush and mistaked Obama once or twice, people kind of waved it off. But it's been happening more and more. I'm sure the stress of his multiple court cases aren't helping it, but it's there, and it's apparent. So there's decline in both candidates. I just think that one is more physical and one is more cognitive. Honestly, neither candidate is desirable, and a rematch and rehash of the 2020 election is nothing that anyone's looking forward to, but it's what we've got. And as much as we always hear that the next election is the most important election in our lifetimes, a second Trump term is not something I'm sure that we can get through. I mean, he's not even back in office, and he's already threatening Nikki Haley that if she doesn't drop out, he's going to have her investigated.
And just a little note to Nikki. She's not going to win. She's not going to win. But if she did, she would be under investigation by those people in 15 minutes. And I could tell you 5 reasons why already. Not big reasons. A little stuff that she doesn't want to talk about. But she will be under investigation within minutes.
But let us know what you think. Go ahead and comment. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. And as always, we'll be back with more.